What will be your call to action for those women that they feel they're missing this space?
They need to go out and try it. I don't care what it is, find it. And if you've tried one thing and you didn't like, then go for the next one. But find your it. Find the reason that moves you. Find your why. Why am I showing that? Why am I gonna take away time for what I'm guilty of taking away from? So it's worth it. And you realize that even if you're guilty, you're still gonna do it because of it.
Gran aliada de la comunidad latina aquí en los Estados Unidos. Hello, everyone. I'm super happy to be here today. Welcome to the Halfway Society podcast called On the Other Side of the Net. And let me tell you a little bit of the story of the Halfway Society and this podcast, The Other Side of the Net. The Halfway Society is a group of women, mostly Latina women like me, like my guest right here that I'm going to introduce in just a few minutes. And we are women, just flesh and blood, that we get up every day, we have jobs, we're entrepreneurs, and we have real stories to share. Not only the stories that you're gonna see here in the podcast, we're gonna bring in a lot of successful professionals, entrepreneurs, but there's what's on the other side of the net for them. What are the real stories, the real struggles. And above everything, we're going to tell stories about women that, like me, I'm not a professional athlete. They're not professional athletes, but many of these women have incredible stories about sports and how sports have shaped who they are today. So, without further ado, welcome to On the Other Side of the Net, our first episode today. I'm incredibly happy and honored to have my really good friend, AnaCristina Blandon, today. Welcome, Ana, to our first episode.
Thank you, Lizette, for having me. The honor and the pleasure is mine to be your first guest on this dream that I remember when you and I started discussing and talking about it. And shortly after we met, I don't even remember how the conversation came about tennis and you playing tennis. And I was like, I used to play when I was little. And you asked me, why, how come you stopped? Like, how come you're not doing it anymore? And ever since a lot of these conversations sparked, I grabbed my racket again and dusted off and I start playing. So it's interesting to be back at it.
And I love that. And that's part of the idea with this podcast, to inspire you to find your own space. We're going to talk a lot here about sports and tennis, but for you, that space can be really anything. Is it painting? Is it reading? Is it, what brings you back to your core, to your center, so that you can show up fully as a leader, not only in your profession, but as a, as a woman in your house, as a mother, as a whatever that means for you, to find that space. And going back to my guest here, AnaCristina, she is an incredibly successful woman. She has an amazing career in financial services, but she's also the leader of the Alpha chapter here in Miami. Ana, you want to share a little bit about Alpha and
Of
what that
course.
has brought to your life?
Yes, Lizette. ALFA is the Association of Latino Professionals for America. We are the largest Latino organization in the States. We are very Latino focused, not exclusive. We are about 75% Latino, which is huge, but if you stop and think about it, that means 25% are not Latino. So we are empowering leaders, we're empowering the next generation. It is very close to the first gen, and by first gen, it could be first generation in college, or it can be first generation in corporate America, first generation here in the States. So our goal is to empower and be that sponsor and mentor and be able to be that companion all the way from college to the C-suite. So that's what Alpha does, and it has been a cause very near to me, to my life. I got my first job as a rising senior at college in 2008 when the economy of the country was going south very quickly. And I was fortunate enough to land a job on site at the national convention. And that's how I started my career in finance, and I moved to Delaware. That's when I rejoined and started being a very active leader in the community and the professional chapter. And when I moved to Miami about 14 years ago, I came and joined, and I've been on and off. Then I became a mom, so I put a pause. And ever since I came back, it has been my core. It has been my zone, my zen, my zone, my a lot of things.
I've heard you say that Alpha is your third child because I know you have two children. How come?
It is my third child because about 6.5 years ago, when I got divorced, and all of a sudden I lose control of almost 50% of the time that I have my kids. And now, what am I doing with that time? And I remember hearing that advice from my attorney when she said, the sooner that you realize what are you going to do with yourself on that time, the better off you're going to be in life. And I did a lot of reading and looking into what happens. And there was forums and chats, but there is a lot of women just crying and mopping because they're alone, and their spouse is not there, no longer there, the children are not there, and then literally, in a way, they're wasting their life away because they don't have any other identity other than the wife of their mother. And to me, at the beginning, even more so, that Alpha was music. I went back, and I found a place that was playing the music that I liked growing up. My ex-husband is American. This is a Spanish rock band. I'm from Mexico and Argentina, and all of the big hits from the 80s and the 90s. And I used to go there by myself because that was the music that I wanted to listen to. And I was like, I don't need anybody. I can just sit here and enjoy the music. But then, as I started going back into Alpha and embarked on that leadership journey, that really helped me a lot. And then COVID hit, and everybody's home, and we're all looking for something to do, and different things. And that gave me a big platform to be able to escalate and skyrocket that leadership journey, to be more involved with a portion from Alpha, which is Women of Alpha.
Yeah.
And it's empowering the Latina women in this country.
I love that, Anna. So we could say that Alpha was kind of a safety net for you, right?
A
Because
hundred
when
percent.
you see Anna Cristina, and if you don't know her that well, you're gonna say, "Oh my gosh, this woman, she's a rock star. She knew what she needed to do, every single day of her life." And when you hear these stories, she almost found Alpha by accident,
I
right?
did.
And,
I
and
did.
and it has become a great part of your journey and your identity, and a way of meaning, and to connect with your community. For many of us that we didn't we weren't born here in the States, that's a very important link. Tell me, Anna, I know you're Colombian.
Yes, I am.
How was it for you growing up? You grew up in Colombia, and I know you came here at about 15. Tell us
I
a
was
little bit
15.
about that journey.
So I was born and raised in a small town in Colombia called Cartago, and I lived in the same place, in the same house, until I was 15, when my mother and I decided to move here. My parents were never married. My dad was always present at from a distance because he wasn't always there. And then when I moved here with my mom, it was a complete culture shock. I moved to Naples, so when I get there, the Latino community was very very small. There was no nightlife. Like, I come from a place that, in Colombia and a lot of our Latin countries, the quinceañera and the party and this and that. And in Naples, by 11 o'clock, nights were out and nobody else in the street. So it was a big shock, but it was peaceful. It was quiet, and I regained something that I had lost. And to me, one of the biggest parts of my life when I was in Colombia as a teenager was tennis. And I used to play from Tuesdays to Sundays. I didn't play Mondays because the club was closed, and I was playing piano at the time. But tennis was my life. And I used to say, you know what, tennis was my life. Tennis is my life. And I enjoyed it. I would be there every day. And I remember one time I started struggling, not struggling, but the one time that I probably got lower grades. And mom came to me. She said, well, I guess we're going to have to cut the tennis time because it's interfering. Very quickly, I got those grades up because I wasn't going to give up my life and my sport. And then several times later, when I look back, I saw that some of the people that I probably would have been hanging out with had I not been playing tennis and hanging out with my tennis teammates, were lost in a lot of different things that are not necessarily the best. And I opened my eyes and I said, wow, tennis wasn't necessarily my life. It saved my life.
I love that. See, and these things, these reflections, again, it can be sports, it can be anything in your life that you're not aware of at the time, but it saved your life. You could have
It did.
ended up in a very different space if it weren't for tennis. And tell me, Anna, what did you learn about this sport? Because one thing that I love about tennis is the analogies
Mhm.
in life, both in our professional life, in our daily lives. What were those learnings, those skills that you keep up to date? I know you don't play much tennis anymore, but you learned those skills
I did.
as a little kid. So how do you apply those today?
A lot of it has to do with strategy, and even more so probably the focus. Like keep your, I always say keep your eye on the prize. It's like you keep the eye on the ball, because sometimes you just have to block everything else and all the noise out, and then just focus on the one thing that you have at hand to be able to do it. But at the same time, and even though it sounds contradictory, it's true, you also have to be thinking about the next thing that you're going to do, because as you're looking your opponent playing and you're analyzing in what side of the court they are, so you know where you're going to send the ball next. So it's that balance, right? Life is about the balance and the integration of the two things, of the right now and what's next.
Yeah. But you cannot go much further, right?
No.
And I think that's very Latina, very for us women. We want to have everything sorted out. We want to know every single thing that's going to happen in our lives. And to me, tennis had taught me that. Like you have to focus on what you're doing now, and probably get ready for the next point. But that's pretty much it, right? And
Yes.
and you have to be present, and you have to adjust. I think that's another great skill of the sport. We talked about
100%.
how, we see these amazing stories of women, and with social media, we see everybody succeeding, and oh my gosh, she must have had everything figured out. No, most of us, I would say all of us, are figuring out one point at a time, and we don't know what's going to happen next. But that's one of the keys of life, right?
One of the things that I also love about it is that when you, like, for example, us as professionals, we're always very concerned of how do we look, right? We need to look up to par. We need to make sure we pat, that our hair is good. That when you're in the court, you just care that your hair is not on your face, so you can see the ball and you can play. But even if you're sweaty, if you're that's the last of your concerns. So you
Yes.
show up as your true self and you give your all, not worry with a lot of things that you're not really worried about,
Yeah.
that normally you would, not that you don't care, but you will worry more when you're outside
Yeah.
than when you're in.
Exactly, exactly. And we were talking about how Alpha was your safety net, what you learned through tennis. And I see many women, especially at our age, when
Mhm.
your kids start growing up, most of us, a lot of us are, starting to see the empty nested situation. What advice would you give to other Latinas, other women out there, that they feel they're missing this space? They don't have the alpha, they don't have the tennis, but they need to find this zen place. What advice will you give these women to get out there and look for this space?
I think it's extremely important to find your identity, and what other than the wife and the mom and the whatever title you may have in your job, who are you, what do you like, what do you do, what fills you, and carve the time to dedicate it to that, because that's going to make you a better person, and you're going to show up as a better employee, or as a better leader, or better wife, or better mom, whatever it may be. That we may have a tendency of feeling guilty because I'm doing X instead of being, with my kids or my husband, or cooking or cleaning or whatever. But it's important first to identify that feeling of guilt, and second, do it despite the guilt, or do it because of the guilt, because you deserve that, because it's yours, and you deserve to carve the time for yourself. Every time that we get on a plane and we're going to take off, um we hear them say, if there is a problem, the mask comes out, put your mask on before you help anybody else. If you don't have your love cup filled, you can't really pour from an empty cup.
You touched on a very important subject for us women, which is guilt. I don't know what is it about guilt, that it's the constant companion. Like, to me, the only way I'm able to overcome that guilt is seeing myself as the woman that comes home after that same space. All I know is I'm a better person
You
after
are.
I dedicated that time uh, to myself. When I go, it's always a guilt. Oh my gosh, I have so much to do. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. But then when I come back, it's, oh, I
I
needed
feel
this
better.
because I feel better, and then I show up better, right, at home, in my profession. And I think it's very important to acknowledge that guilt,
Yes,
as you're saying, and do it despite
this part.
or
Or
because of the,
because of
I
it.
loved it.
Do it because of it.
Because of the guilt.
Yes.
I love that. Anna, and we're not here about to talk about titles. And again, we know you're super successful, but tell me, this movement is called the Halfway
Mhm.
Society. What does it mean to you being a half?
I'm gonna break that in two. To me, the halfway society, and hearing you ever since we've discussed the doing something before you had a name and form and shape, and the idea of it. And when you sent me the first time, and I read the content, and to me it was like there's two things in my life that I've said at different times that have in a way saved my life. Let's put it that way. One is the tennis, the other one is alpha, which is all the leadership thing. You're bringing them together in one.
Mhm.
So you know exactly what it means to me, but to the people that are just listening, you just heard part of my story of two different aspects and two different times that in a way did save my life. So the Jefas Way Society, it is something that is very near to my heart, not only because it's you, but because of what it means. Because it means that two things that have shaped my life, have saved my life, and have been my life in more way than once coming together.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing you said that you grabbed your first racket at 40. Well, I just turned 40 in January, and I have decided that I'm coming back to play.
Mhm.
It's never too late to start, and definitely never too late to do it again. So I know you and I have been saying for the last couple of years that we're gonna play. It's time for real, we're gonna play.
We're gonna play.
And for me, being a jefa, a lot of people try to translate it, oh, as a boss lady or as a whatever you want to translate. I don't think it has a translation because that's the beauty
Yeah,
of the
Spanish.
jefa or the Spanish of a wonderful language. But for me, it's showing up authentically, is
Yeah.
living and going to bed in peace, knowing that I gave my best. I did the best that I could, that I am the architect of my own destiny, that I carved my way, that everything that I have done and everything that I've made and built in my career, it's because I've done it, not because somebody else gave it to me. I
Perfect.
earn it. I carve my own way. I've broken the ceilings. I pave. I trailblaze my way through where I've been and where I am.
I love that. And what will be your call to action for those women that are listening to you right now? Like they feel they don't have this Jefa space, whatever that means for them. Because remember, your Jefa space is yours, is for you to define. But what will be your call to action for those women that they feel they're missing this space?
So they need to go out and try it. I don't care what it is, find it. And if you've tried one thing and you didn't like, then go for the next one. But find your it. Find the reason that moves you. Find your why. Why am I showing up? Why am I gonna take away time for what I'm guilty of taking away from? So it's worth it. And you realize that even if you're guilty, you're still gonna do it because of it.
Yeah. And I deeply believe that when women feel good inside and outside, and movement has a lot to do with it. Seriously, when we move, we feel better, right? So, just to add to what Anna is saying, you find your space to move towards that goal you're trying to achieve. Move forward in life, move forward in a sport, move forward in your passion, your art, your activity, because when we move, we feel better and we show up fully and as better women, as better, to construct a better world. So, Anna, thank you so very much for being here today. It is my absolute pleasure and honor that you were the first guest in the Halfway Society on the other side of the net.
The
Thank you
honor
so
is all
much.
mine.
Thank you,
Thank
my
you.
dear.